I didn't really know what mushrooms were about. And back then we were just kind of partying. And now we know it's a plant medicine. And it just kind of, I would say it sort of shattered who I thought I was. And I had what I can bring to language now, this experience of unity consciousness. I sort of realized, oh my God, whatever is happening in this life, our physical aspect of it is just such a small spectrum of it.
Hello, trailblazers and fellow beautiful humans. I am here today with Tim Shields, and this man, we could do like 30 episodes on his life. I am going to read a little bit about him, and then I'm going to welcome him, and we're going to just take this where it goes. So for nearly 3 decades, Tim Shields has been accumulating life experience through travel, right? It's like that hits me in the heart right there, which has included buying a one-way ticket to India and twice each to Europe and Mexico. The result of his adventures accumulated in a book, A Curious Year in the Great Vivarium Experiment. Since walking away from a corporate career in late 2015, Tim has made his living as an author, writing coach, and editor, and a literary collaborator. This has afforded him the opportunity to work with global thought leaders in the fields of science and spirituality, professional athletes, and rock stars. The common thread of his work is the shared passion for human potential. His most well-known work is with editor and renowned neuroscientist, researcher, lecturer, and New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Joe Dispenza. We want to give him the credit he is due. Dr. Joe Dispenza on his critically acclaimed book, Becoming Supernatural, How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon. Tim's passion is in writing about the human experience through the prisms of consciousness, quantum physics, healing, transformation, human potential, society, and culture. Just reading that makes my heart pitter patter. Welcome, Tim. These are all my favorite subjects.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be with you. I was the editor on Becoming Supernatural. You called Joe the editor, but just a little clarification.
That's
there.
Me trying to read and look at the camera at the same time. I'm new to this podcasting, so bear with me, folks.
Reading's always the hardest part.
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah.
So still, what a fabulous experience. So I want to back us up a little bit, because if you go to his website, which we're going to give you all the details, it'll be in all the links. Tim has led a really fascinating life. And the essence of this show is always write your outcome. Sometimes we can't determine the events that will happen in our life, but we can always write an outcome. So I want Tim to talk about his beginnings and what led him into this. You know, what were the defining moments in your life that you realized I need to maybe rewrite a new outcome for myself? And what did you learn from those moments? So if you could start us from what got you on this journey.
Well, what got me on this journey is probably what got a lot of other people on the journey, which was maybe not accidentally, but taking a huge dose of mushrooms at a Grateful Dead concert at 17.
And he says this on his website, full disclosure. So start with the mushroom story.
I didn't really know what mushrooms were about. And back then we were just kind of partying. And now we know it's a plant medicine. And it just kind of, I would say it sort of shattered who I thought I was. And I had what I can bring to language now, this experience of unity consciousness. I sort of realized, oh my God, whatever is happening in this life, our physical aspect of it is just such a small spectrum of it. And, when you have these internal experiences, whether it's on plant medicine or meditation or near-death experience, you can't go back to the old person. So I kind of saw this whole new reality. And I wanted to know about it. I wanted to, all of my work, I think, comes back to the question, not just me, but in a reflection of everybody. Who am I? What are we doing here? My sister's boyfriend, I idolized him. I met him when I was 10. He was probably 10 years older than me. And he was an aspiring writer. And he was always like, you should keep a journal. So after this experience, I started keeping a journal. And I think today I have probably 61 notebooks of my life on paper, plus gratitude and intention journals. And so the other thing is I wanted to be a writer so bad. I don't know whether I would say it was my calling. that I started asking to be used as an instrument of peace. I used to just say, like, way back when, the prayer of St. Francis, like, use me as an instrument of peace, because I just wanted to express the mystery. And, you start adulting. I was in New York City at the tail end of the dot-com bust, and I'm chasing IPOs, and I wind up in Seattle and working for Microsoft as a vendor and a bunch of other, big corporations. But there was always that soul ache, I call it, in the first book. And the soul ache is the calling. And it just gets more and more uncomfortable until you listen to it. So moving forward to another inciting incident, I had kind of a decade of sick parents. I call myself a martini baby. My dad was actually in World War II. He thought he was retiring, and then, surprise, you're having another child. And here I am. But so my dad passed away in 2004, and my mom, I didn't know because I was living in Seattle, and my family kind of, since I'm the baby, they kind of kept it from me. But my mom was slipping from Parkinson's and dementia. And she passed away in 2010. And, when I was younger, reading people like Steinbeck and Joyce and Hemingway, like, I just knew that if I wanted to have big things to write about, I had to have big experiences. And to me, that meant travel. And I had taken a couple big trips before. My first big one was volunteering at an orphanage in Tanzania for 2 months. But, when my mom passed away, I was like, all right, it's my time. I don't have to go home, to visit my parents. So I bought a one-way ticket to India and to find the story. And, when my mom passed away, I had been kind of preparing myself for a long time. And then when the finality of something like that happens, it's like the rug is swept out from under you. And I was scared and lost and didn't know what I was doing. And so a friend of my sister's, I had a conversation with her, and she was kind of an energy healer. And she's like, all right, you're a writer. I want you to do this exercise. I want you to write down 5 things you're grateful for and 5 things you want to create. And you're going to find that the things you create today are going to be the things you're grateful for in the future. And I was like, I'll try anything. So I just started doing it, and boom, all these things started unfolding. And there's a whole backstory to that. That's actually in the book. The URL is A Curious Year. If you want to go there, the title can be easy to forget or confuse. And, everything started unfolding. I was like, okay, since I had volunteered in an orphanage, I knew when you jump into something huge, international travel, it's great to have sort of a landing pad. So I was like, I want to be of service. I want to volunteer. Through an old family connection, I get connected to this woman in India, and she's like, do you want to volunteer in an eco ashram? And I'm like, sure. What the hell's that? I tend to say yes before I figure out what it is. And then when I get there, I'm like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? That's always like the first question. And then everything unfolds out of it. But I said yes to this eco ashram, and I thought I was just going to be like sweeping floors and, making beds. And it turns out this guy was India's most important environmental lawyer, the grandfather of environmental law in India. He had sued the state of India over 20 years to create a green zone around the Taj Mahal. And he wanted somebody to write grants. And I was like, well, I've never written a grant, but I'm a writer. And all I need to do is look at the structure, and then we can plug everything in. So, I only had enough money to travel for about 4 months, but it was like the things I was writing down just started unfolding. And I traveled for 15 months, a whole year in Southeast Asia, which is what the book is about. And then at the end, I was on my way to Italy, but I had never been to Germany. And I was like, I'm going to go see my buddy who was my first boss in Seattle. And when I got there, he's like, why don't you just stay? I'll get you a job, whatever, And so I went to H&M, and I bought like khakis and a blue shirt. And I wound up working at Bayer Pharmaceuticals, which is like as corporate, everybody in their like steel gray suit. And, my friend was like, you may see a casually dressed man in the hallway. That's just Tim. Don't call security. So I wound up living in Berlin for 3 months. And, that took me up to 15 months, and opportunities just kept unfolding. But I was like, I think I have to go home and start my life at some point, whatever that means. I guess I was living it the whole time, but maybe being a grown up or something like that. And, that kind of travel, it goes in waves, and you're like, oh my God, this is the best. I never want to stop. And then I just want my bed. I just want stability. And so, that was sort of the inciting incident, my mom passing away.
Yeah. So Oh my gosh, I wish I was taking notes the whole time because you said so many good things. Gratitude practice, journaling, following the energy, trusting. If you want to have a big life, you have to have big experiences. I didn't write it all down, but it's, the book is A Curious Year. Am I saying that properly? You definitely have to check it out.
Yeah.
You can watch the trailer on his website as well of his experience. And again, it's that seeking the fulfillment. So, you've trusted, you did all these things. What would you say your biggest lessons and I love how you say I needed to get my life, back, right? I need to start my life. You already were having the most amazing life and adventure, right? But we don't sometimes realize that when we're right in it, that this is our life. So when you did return, or you did maybe just unpack what you learned, what were your maybe top 3 lessons from this year of living abroad?
Well, if I had to distill my work into 2 pillars, it would be surrender and trust, because that's what I'm trying to master in this life. And I think the biggest lesson was when you jump, the net appears. And you are supported by forces beyond the unseen world. We are energy in matter, in body, but we are from somewhere else. And the same energy that courses through us has created the entire universe. And I'm sure people were like, oh my God, he's so cool and brave. But like the first 2 days in New Delhi, I was like in my hotel room in the fetal position, like, oh my God, what have I done?
What did I do?
I'm in a country with like 23 billion people and I don't know anybody. What the hell was I thinking? But it's funny, every time I get to like a new city or something like that, I have that kind of panic. And then I just sort of start walking in concentric circles around like the hotel and widening it. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is pretty cool. This is pretty wild. And my only plan, like I showed up in India with a Lonely Planet Nepal, which really does good when you're in India. So my only plan was to go up to Dharamsala, which is where the foothills of the Himalayas and where the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government is in exile, because I heard it was a cool place for artists and expats, and everything unfolded from there. And I met that lawyer, and we met in person, and he invited me to work with him. And I wound up probably for around a month or something like that, living in this eco ashram, which means like barely
green.
There was electricity, but the internet barely worked. And I was in the middle of nowhere by myself. And there was one other person that was there kind of taking care of the property, but he would throw these retreats for either like thought leaders or kids who were in law school, and throw these like fake trials and everything like that to teach them. So, I met people through that. And then my plan was just to travel all over India, but I was pretty much near Rishikesh for almost 2 months, which is where the Beatles went to, seek enlightenment. And when I was in Dharamsala in the beginning, I met these 2 cousins, and they were like, come meet my family in Kashmir and Jammu, which is, right on the edge of Pakistan. They're always warring, and the State Department says don't go up there, but I was like, what else am I going to do? And so I was with these local people. I might not have otherwise felt as safe and secure, but that was the first time I ever came out of an airport, and they were like putting the mirrors under the cars looking for bombs. And again, I was like, what have I gotten myself into? But it was incredible. It was the most beautiful nature I've ever seen. And
Let
at one
me ask
point,
you.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
finish
just
the
at
thought.
one point, I went with these guys on like pack mules up to the top of like a 14,000 foot mountain beneath an 18,000 foot glacier. And I just camped there, and we caught like, I don't know, lake trout or something up there, and just was under the stars. It was pretty profound.
I just love, the visual I have of that. It's just being open to what comes, trusting your life's path. What advice would you give people? I'm very similar to you. I've taken adventures, but none that. I went to Athens by myself. I went to Spain by myself. I've done things like that. But I remember same thing, or Mexico. I threw myself in Spanish school, different places around the world. But I always that first day being in a country where everything's different, it smells different, it sounds different. And, I'm very uncomfortable, but then it just eases, right? I always say within 24 hours, you kind of acclimate. What would be your advice to someone to kind of walk through that fear because you can't have this big adventure, this big life if you're not willing to walk through these little uncomfortable moments? What advice would you give people?
I mean, you have to be curious, have the curiosity overcome the fear, and you have to surrender. And I don't think India is probably one of the wildest countries for a Westerner. It's like even the physics seems to work different there. There's such a contrast in everything from smells to poverty to wealth, and you really have no other choice but to surrender. So, I found that when you are sort of fighting the flow or in fear, that is what's amplified. And that's actually true throughout all of life, but especially in India. And it was like the moment I surrendered, the path started appearing and trusting.
Oh my God, you read my mind. I want to stop on that for a second because, when you said I met these two brothers and we went up and hiked up on this mountain, and did you always have a trust of life? How did you build, in the West, I always talk in my classes, in the West, we have this thing where we say, you want my trust, earn it. And I always say, no, it goes the other way. Like give trust what shows up, trust who shows up. And there's, I think it's an Abraham Lincoln quote. I'd rather be burned once in a while than never trust. So was trust something you always had for other people in other countries and strangers? My nanny's church when I was growing up had a slogan, there are no strangers here at St. Mark's, only friends we haven't met. Mm-hmm. So I want to, where did that little thumbs down just go?
I have no idea.
We're having the universe interacting with us right now. So trust, could tell us about, was trust something you were working on when you were in the United States? Was something you discovered while you were there? Did that evolve?
Well, I think to be a writer or an artist, you have to trust, because it is a pathless path, as J. Krishnamurti said. But so, I had this dream of being a writer and I didn't know how to get there. Just doing the work, journaling and everything like that. And I wrote terrible screenplays. I started 100 different books. But, it's probably, my sister pointed out one time, my mother was an incredibly loving woman, but she was a very fearful woman. So it's almost like the pendulum swing, like, okay. So, that fear was probably imprinted upon me. And, to overcome it, this is what I chose, but also like, I again, like going back to the writers of my youth, like falling in love with the feeling of their language and the feeling of their travels and just being like, wow, I want to have a big life. I want to have those experiences. So, I was always freelancing and I'd make some money and then I would take off. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I just sat at Google or Microsoft for 4 years and like took the money, took the stock options. But yeah, I've never really taken the safe path, and it definitely has pushed me to my edge. But
like what you're saying,
times.
It always works out.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to be, whoever's listening, I want you to think about, if you even took a timeline of your life from like, when was your worst events in your life? And then what came after, you probably found it always works out. You always figure it out. And, it's that trust. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years now. August is my 25th anniversary. And, the market goes up and down and work comes and goes, but it always works out. And we live in this society, and this is what I'd love you to speak to. Everyone's trying to protect them. We've got cameras everywhere. We've got neighborhood watch. We've got, I don't even know. I don't have any of that stuff. Don't come to my house. But, it's like, we could put so many fences and so many cameras, and we can have so many, I don't even know what it's called, these neighborhood, Facebook pages where everyone's warning each other, or we could just trust. Hello, I am interrupting this podcast with 3 surprises for you. I have been in business 25 years this August 2025. So to celebrate and thank you for your support, because I could have not done this without you, my clients, my supporters, my listeners, you have made this possible. I am offering you 3 gifts because 3 is my lucky number. So the first gift is $125 off my signature Happiness is a Habit video series. This video series is 18 videos, about an hour and a half of video content, an 80-page downloadable PDF workbook, Normally selling for about $297. Now you can get $125 off. If you go to my website, energizeyourhappiness.com, and click on the icon on the top that says a gift for you, you will see everything you need to get your $125 off this fabulous video series. Secondly, I am offering a free behind the book mini workshop on my new book, which isn't even out yet. Energize Your Happiness. I'm offering only 12, first come, first serve. A couple have already been booked, so they are dwindling quickly. But I will give you in this 45 minutes, if you get a group of people together, I will give you some takeaways that you can implement immediately, and I will host a Q&A. And thirdly, the best thing, drum roll please, I am doing live coaching right here on Write Your Outcome, if you qualify. So if you are interested in being coached live on this show, send me an email at michele@energizeyourhappiness.com. And in the subject line, write, I want to be coached live on your show. And then tell me a little bit about what you want to be coached on. And if you qualify, we will put you in the queue. So that's 3 gifts for you, 3 fabulous ways to connect. So, claim your gifts now, make it a great day, and let's get back to the podcast. So how do you translate what you learned about that to just everyday life in the United States?
This sounds a little woo-woo, but
we like woo-woo.
It's also quantum physics, but I think that who you are being, for lack of a better word, the frequency which you could create, which you could attach to emotions. If you are in joy and trust, the external world is a mirror to your internal world, and everything works on frequency. So that's, I feel like if you are operating in that higher frequency, and to stay there, you do your practices, whether that's meditation or journaling, but some sort of contemplative, reflective practice to expand your self-awareness. So when you come up against those fear triggers, you recognize where they are and where they come from. But, when I have been at my best and in the biggest flow, and I'm in trust, and I talk about in my new book, sort of the transformation chamber. And we all go through the transformation chamber all the time, but sometimes bigger than others. And I'm kind of in one right now, and it's I can't say I'm enjoying it, but I've turned a corner. And when I can look at it from a higher perspective, it's a beautiful divine construction, because I'm rewriting the new book, and so I'm taking my current experience in the transformation chamber. And when I talk about the transformation chamber, it's like the chrysalis, the butterfly goes into the chrysalis. It actually uses its own enzymes to melt itself to become something new. So when you're in the transformation chamber, you just have to remember that this situation is designed to make you fly. So you can either wither on the branch of the milkweed, or you can go into the transformation chamber and there is a deeper seated intelligence in the cells of the caterpillar and the chrysalis that triggers its transformation when it's time. And the other thing about that is, if you stop that transformation, like if the butterfly comes out and you touch it or something before its wings dry or anything like that, it's going to die. It's not going to complete its transformation. So you have to just, see these transformations through.
And what I'm hearing you say, which is so, first of all, I'm right there with you with vibration. I'm a huge believer in, the law of attraction or the law of focus or whatever we want to call it. That, we are creating with our thoughts. What comes back to us is a mirror. But I love what you're saying is the trust without knowing. And that's where people get stuck. It's kind of like if I said, Tim, you're in Palm Springs, I'm going to drive to Palm Springs. And I start to drive to Palm Springs and it starts to rain. And so, I don't want to drive in the rain. So I turn around. And then I start to drive again. And then there's a roadblock. So I turn around. It's like that butterfly, right? So that's what happens when we have doubts and fears. We have to trust the process without turning around, right? Without, to go through it and to know that everything is for us. And what do you call it? The transformation?
The transformation chamber.
Chamber. I love it.
Yeah.
Tell us about your new book. Tell us the title. I want to make sure everyone gets as much Tim Shields as they can.
Well, the new book is called Dream Tethering, 13 Keys to Creating the Life of Your Dreams. And it's really kind of the formalized philosophy of the narrative in the first book. It started out as me writing to my 17-year-old self about everything I've learned. And then, my agent was like, this is a hard thing to sell. So I've had to redo it a couple times. And then it went to the publisher and they wanted this major rewrite. So I've kind of been on this archaeological dig through 4 different stories to pull out the nuggets.
Thank you for not giving up.
Yeah, something I almost walked away. I was like, I want to do this my way, and then one day I was just kind of like, all right, people don't know who I am. I haven't earned the right to tell the story I want to tell yet. And I'm going to trust the professionals. And it's definitely something new emerging. And I've had to cut it from 85,000 words down to 60,000 words. And now I'm at about 55,000 words. But it's really about answering the calling and using the power of our focused awareness to create the reality that we want to live. And it's sort of a softball title to explain the mechanics of the universe and how our consciousness interacts with the external world to create our reality. So it's there's like a new model of self-actualization I call the circlotron, which is based on concentric circles, because if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization exists at the tip, which would suggest that you've reached some ultimate pinnacle or peak state.
Got it.
But I would say that self-actualization is that dynamic state of expansion, contraction. And that's where the fear and the trust and the surrender comes in. If you are moving towards your dream and you are in fear, you are going to retreat to an inner circle of the circlotron. And all of these concentric circles represents levels of consciousness. So if you want to get to the next level of the circlotron, which is the next level of self-actualization, which is the next level of consciousness, I think you have to overcome one of 3 things, which is fear, trauma, or limited thinking. When you jump to that next level of the circlotron, there are new experiences, new people, new possibilities, but you can't get there unless you overcome that limited aspect of yourself. So it's really, there's also an updated hero's journey as the evolution of consciousness. It's really kind of a new way to go after your dreams from being internal and still and the place of creation within you, rather than forcing and fighting and moving through the world like a bowling ball.
Well, I'm feeling very wizardish as I listen to you, like the circlotron and the transformation chamber. Like I love that. I love the feelings that even elicits. And it's kind of knowing that it doesn't end, right? I think of it as if I'm almost picturing a video game as you're talking, right? If you're playing a video game, the monsters come and they want to eat you. But once you get to the next level, there's just a new set of monsters, right? It's like you never reach that peak that you're talking about, that I've arrived at self-actualization. But there's always a new level of learning and understanding. And the way you describe it, I mean, just your words sound very, they're really painting a picture for me. So I know this book is going to be fabulous. What are your go-to habits, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, to get yourself, back in this flow, in this grounded state, in this peaceful?
Well, I'm just going to add one more thing about that hero's journey. Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, it's about moving through the external world. It's a myth about moving through the external world to slay the internal dragons. This hero's journey is about slaying your internal dragons. Those, I call them core wounds, these things that happen in childhood and they exist in your unconscious, and so you might get in a fight with your partner, but you're actually, or like you're in a boardroom or something, but you're actually reacting from the 6th grade wound when you were hurt. So it's about overcoming that those internal aspects of yourself. That's how you get further in life. Because even if you are overcompensating for this core wound and you are a successful billionaire, there is still that feeling within you. And it's the soul ache, which is the calling for something more. And I think ultimately that leads us into some aspect of service. because we're all connected at the the quantum level. Again, not to go too woo-woo, but habit-wise, meditation. I actually started praying a lot more than I used to, and I think prayer is kind of an outbound signal, and meditation is kind of an inbound signal.
Can you explain? I feel like I know what you mean, but can you explain that to anyone listening?
Well, you could say prayer is asking, meditation is listening. And I get a lot of information in my meditations. And, another thing is most of this book, actually, a lot of this book came through being in nature. It started during COVID when I was working with this woman in New Braunfels, Texas. And I went for a walk down to the Guadalupe River. When I go for a walk, I put my headphones on to get myself into that trance state. So the thinking brain stops, and then you're open to, the infinite fields of information. And we had been talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs that day. And I'm just walking down the Guadalupe, and all of a sudden this image of these concentric circles pops into my head. And that's kind of one of the pillars of how this book started. And then I'm currently living in Palm Springs, and there's this beautiful, I've never seen terrain like this, but this beautiful palm canyon, and they're the only kind of indigenous palm trees to California. And I would just go for a walk, and I would put on my headphones, and I would ask myself the creative question I needed to solve. And that might be like, I'm getting to the end of this chapter. I'm getting a little anxious. I don't know what the hell the next chapter's about. So I just ask, and I go into that trance state, and the information comes through. If I sat down to write about a new hero's journey of the circlotron, I couldn't even come up with that idea. So it just kind of came in. And then, a part of my daily morning practice is my gratitude intention journal. I just literally write today I am so grateful for, and write at least 5 things. And then I write today I intend and create, and write those things. And I've been doing it since October 2010. And I can't tell you how many things have come out of it. And, I'm about to, because I'm in sort of the transformation chamber, I'm about to do a mind movie. Do you know what that is?
I do.
Yeah. For people who don't know,
tell them.
It's something from Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And it's basically I use Apple Movie or something, and you just create these images, put these images in of yourself for the future, and these mantras you want, or, what you want to create. And I've had so many things come out of that. At one point, about 2 years before it happened, I put Dr. Zach Bush in my mind movie. And I said, I work with the top thought leaders in the world. And, I didn't even think again about it. Of course, if I'd hear him on a podcast, I'd be like, I'd love to work with this guy. And then I get invited to this, because you never know. It's like you're dropping these stone in the pond, and the ripples go out, and you don't know how big the pond is. So you don't know when that ripple or that frequency is going to come back to you. But I got invited to this small research thing at UCSD, and it was only about 14 people, and Zach was presenting there. And when we were walking to one of the labs, there were 4 of us, and he's like, "So how are you involved in this?" And I started stumbling over my words, and then I just said, "Well, I'm trying to come up with something clever, but I have nothing." And then my friend Hillary was like, "Oh, he was Dr. Joe's editor for 6 years," and then he was like, "Really? Are you available?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And by the time we got to the lab, he had asked me for my number. And I've created so many things out of those things. You just have to be intentional. I think so many people are, and I'm saying this to myself as much as I'm saying it to anybody else, but so many people are just moving through the world on autopilot, and they go to their job because that's what they're supposed to do. And then they come home and make dinner, and then Netflix. And if there is no time for intention or contemplation in your day, then you are just on autopilot, and you are on almost a preordained trajectory.
Can I stop you? There's so much good stuff here. I hope everyone is paying attention. I want to break this down. So you don't have to go to India. You could go to India for a year, or you could take a walk in the woods. get yourself into that space where, it's getting out of the daily grind, like he's saying, going to work, hitting repeat, doing the same thing. It's letting yourself be so that the thoughts and ideas sink into you. It's the difference between having a thought and having it divine and, inspiration. And then the journaling. I love what you're saying, because these are such good reminders, because we take for granted, 5 things I'm grateful for. That works. So anyone listening, if you want to start, it could start by just taking a walk in the woods, and letting yourself breathe and go through your senses. It could be through the journaling process. It could be through, I know Joe Dispenza does really long meditations. I like to do 15-minute meditations, but you have to start where you are. But Tim is sharing so many golden nuggets here of really stepping away from the daily to-dos and to the being, and to when you take those little mini breaks, macro breaks. Again, you could go on a great adventure, or you could go out in your backyard for a half an hour without any electronics. Just the other day I was laying in the yard and I was watching this family of 4 blue jays, and I have 2 families of cardinals, and there's so much out there when you take yourself out of the thinking brain. Mm-hmm. So he said so many good things, learning to trust, journaling, gratitude, being with nature, and then writing your outcome, the mind movie. Oh my gosh, you reminded me. I used to use it. I forgot. To me, it's like the vision board, right? In a movie.
Yeah,
I have
it's
my
like
vision
a digital
board over
vision
here.
board. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get to watch yourself in the movie. So really, if you have never done one, I highly encourage it. So Tim, if you could leave everyone with like one last, word of wisdom, thought, belief that you really, you want to hit home or repeat, what would that be?
I think we are a fractal of the one. There is only oneness. We are in the third dimension. We are trained into materialism and to think this external reality is the real thing. But if we move down to the quantum level, energy, spirit, it's all one. And it's actually a very interactive universe. And it interacts with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Those are the frequencies that call in your life. And so it's really about getting very still and moving from victimhood to creatorhood. And you are actually far more powerful than you realize. But I talk about the perception machine in the new book.
I meant to hit on that too, because that was such a good one you mentioned before.
Yeah, it's the media, it's social media, it's all this external programming that distracts us from the truth of who we are. And the perception machine puts these dangling carrots out there to incite our emotions and to move us into fear and division. But at the root of everything, we are all one. We all want the same thing. We want, safety, security, abundance, love, provide for our family. And, the greatest coup is politics. It's just all bullshit. They're all on the same team at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so true. And I always say the universe wants to play with us. The universe is out there. It wants to play with us, but you have to be in that right mindset to play with it. You have so much wisdom, so much knowledge. You've had so many fabulous experiences. Everyone really needs to get a copy of his book. Go on his website because he has a wealth of resources. Follow him on Instagram. All these links will be in here. And if you're not a woo-woo person, I want you to step in a little bit. The water is fine over here. And what I love about everything Tim's saying is, being someone who works in corporations, is it's more mainstream than we think. I always, there's always believers. There's always people that, I always say I'm the boardroom meets the yoga mat kind of. And, bringing these beliefs, and these thoughts that are beliefs and thoughts and emotions are creating our world. I could talk to you forever, because I think I need to have you back on when your book comes out, because
I would love that.
This is such a deep, rich conversation.
It's really not woo-woo. It's quantum physics, it's neuroscience, it's epigenetics. Dr. Joe Dispenza always says science is the contemporary language of science. Something like science is the contemporary language of mysticism. That's what he says.
Ah, yeah.
So what he's doing is unearthing this stuff. And it's really just ancient wisdom that's been lost over time.
Yes. Oh my God. He just hit the nail on the head. And that's what I love. Metaphysics and positive psychology, emotional intelligence are all saying the same thing. And what's the Einstein quote? It's all branches of the same tree.
Yeah.
So, I don't know who's listening. If you think you're a left brain or a right brain or a science or a metaphysical, to me, it's a mind that's open to everything. And that's, Tim has let himself go there and, has proven, like, I just love the fact that you just took off to India, took off to Mexico, and let the universe teach you. So I asked you final last words of wisdom, but anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I would just say that, metaphysics, meta means above. So it's the layer above the physical world, which is energy. So it's like before its energy slows down into patterns to become the physical world. There is physics, which is the material world, and then there's metaphysics, which is energy, which is above. And what is above comes down into below, and vice versa.
Just got the chills. That was so good. Yeah. So in Tim's words, he just said, you always have more power than you think. I thank you so much, Tim. I am going to have you back on when your book comes out. Thank you to everyone listening. This is Michele Phillips, and write your outcome.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, you can.
I also have a podcast on all platforms called The Inciting Incident, because, I think for every thought leader or public figure, there was always an inciting incident. So I've always been interested in the human stories behind the successful people. So the concept is in between the inciting incident and the public figure is how they dream tethered. You can find that on all the platforms, and then my YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, website, it's The Real Tim Shields.
We're going to put all this in the links. This is, he's got so much good information, and I love this stuff. We could keep going on forever. I am going to end this episode, but that's only this episode because Tim will be back. So again, thank you, Tim Shields, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.